Hunting Big with Steve Bartilla. Brought to you by
last 10, 20 years or so, we've been programmed to think of food plots and farm crops as deer food. And they are, don't get me wrong. I mean, when I was zipping through here yesterday, setting up cams, man, it was 4 hours before dark, and I kicked a flock of deer off this honey hole and trophy clover combination plot here. Green soybeans right away early in season can be a tremendous draw. Alfalfa, early season, tremendous draw. But you know what else is going on those times of years? You've got cool season grasses and forbs. Forbs is just a fancy word for weeds. You got cool season grasses and forbs that are kicking out 15-20% protein. Okay, that's all over the place. You've got leafy growth. Northern Wisconsin, they did a stomach content study years ago. For the entire time they were available in green, aspen leaves made up the bulk of those deer's diets. Woody browse, even in lush ag areas, is frankly a staple of whitetails' diets. Now, we've been programmed to think of food plots and farm crops as deer food, and they are, but there are all sorts of natural deer foods out there as well. This is key for people hunting the big woods, obviously, because deer are creatures of their stomachs. Now, in other words, food outside of during the breeding phase, when really it's breeding that is driving the buck's engine. Outside of the active breeding phase, I'll tell you what, it's hard to come up with something more important in a whitetail's world than food, and their world revolves around it. So when hunting these big wood settings, man, I'll tell you what, if you can find the food, you got half the battle. And food is generally easier to find than bedding. And now you find the bedding and you need to try to figure out, okay, is this a buck bedding area? Is it a family group bedding area? Is this a lone doe? Okay, it's a buck, but now is this a buck I want to hunt? Food. Food is really important to key on. So what are some big woods food sources? Obviously those clear cuts, anywhere from that year on to 3, 4, 5 years from then. Now, while you have all that lush regrowth of weeds and grasses and woody browse and leafy vegetation on that woody browse, okay, and then you have those stands of young popple regrowth, aspen regrowth. Those leaves, while they're nice and green and tender, are just like deer candy to whitetails. Maple leaves, certain types of maple leaf, the sugar maple, when they're dropping, you know, those maple leaves of the sugar maple are almost like candy. We have soft and hard masts out there. Acorns. I'll tell you what, if there was one food that whitetails tend to survive on in this world, it's acorns. Or more than anything else. And I'm not saying volume-wise, I'm talking about that big woods buck. He's coming up to the rut. He's going to lose 25 to 30% body weight. You have a bunch of high-carb, high-fat acorns laying around the woods, and he can fatten himself up better for the rut. And if there's some left over, he can utilize it as recovery food after he's lost that weight. If we're going to hunt food in the big woods, we need to understand what those food sources are. The more we go around nosing around, pay attention to what those whitetails are nipping on, and we can utilize that information in our hunting approach. Remember, this isn't the only type of deer food. There were deer that survived on this earth long before we planted our first cornfield.
Hunting Big with Steve Bartilla. Brought to you by
Whitetails outside of the rut, for sure, are creatures of their stomach. So if we can understand what those deer are eating, where they're eating it, we can take advantage of that. Real easy in egg country, food plots and corn, but even in egg country, woody browse and vegetative greenery make up so much more of a whitetail's diet than we realize. You go to the big woods and that's all they've got to eat. But you focus on those meadows, you focus on those browse, you focus on those mass crops. You look at someplace like upstate New York. There used to be farmyards all over. They all planted apple trees. Those apple trees, not only are they great when they're dropping apples, but they're good quality woody browse as well. The more we can understand what the deer are eating, the better off we are when it comes to putting ourselves in position to take advantage of it.